Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden, and we're also going to stick to my home county of Skåne here in the very south of the country. So for this review, we will return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good number of times before. These guys are very new to the Swedish beer scene though, and I've been very impressed with the beers that I've had from them so far. I think this will be review number 7 or 8 that I've done involving this brewery, if memory serves me correctly, but it's been a few months since my last review actually, and I would say that these guys seem to specialise in the big kind of fruity, juicy sour beers, the Berliner Weisses, the Goses and stuff like this. So yeah, if you're a fan of the likes of Morgendagens, Fermentarana, Wizard, Duck Pond, these kind of breweries, this is one of the new and kind of up and coming breweries that I would definitely recommend that you check out. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head down to Malmö, a few kilometres to the south of me here in Lund, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Elmeleven. So this particular beer is called Stars Are Other Suns. It comes in at 5% ABV, and they're describing this one as a fruited sour ale with pink guava, peach and mango. So yeah, going by the ingredients list, it says that it contains wheat malt and rye malt. So I'm wondering if it will be a little bit like a Berliner Weisse, but you know, they're not calling it that specifically, so I don't know. But yeah, like I said, Elmeleven, very new on the beer scene, doing some really nice kind of big fruity juicy sour type beers, and yeah, I do have high hopes for this one on the basis of the other beers that I've had from them before. So yeah, really looking forward to trying this one. This beer was released as part of the Lokal och Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for February of 2021, and it's been, I think the last release I had from these guys might have been like October of 2020 if I remember correctly. So yeah, cool to see them releasing some more beers, and I think there are a few others planned to come out in Systembolaget over the next couple of months. But yeah, definitely check these guys out if you're interested in the big kind of fruity juicy sours. But yeah, let's go for it then and see how we get on with this one. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Elmeleven before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is that you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Elmeleven once again then. So Elmeleven, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Malmö, and this company was founded by Anders Kvist. So he started brewing a couple of years back. He released his first beers in 2020, and he says that he views brewing his beer as his sort of artistic expression. But his interest in beer started when his friend bought him what he called a non-industrial lager beer, and he was just kind of blown away. You know, he realised this is what beer can actually be. But soon after this, his girlfriend bought him a cheap beer kit where you could basically add water and brew your own beer. But he just thought it must be possible to do it so much better than this, and this was what pushed him into home brewing. So he took part in various competitions and then joined the -1 or Minuset, I'm never sure exactly what to call it, but he joined the -1 Minuset Brewing Collective, which is under the Bishop's Arms bar in Gustavs Adolfs Torg in Malmö. There's quite a few breweries out of Malmö have evolved out of there, but this was where he sold his first commercial beers. But the production has been very small over the last few years, only a few thousand litres. But in 2020 he started brewing his beers in the Nerd, Chad and Lilla Ulfabriken brewery, and he started doing several Systembolaget releases over 2020, and his beers have gone down very well as far as I can gather. But mainly this brewery brews IPAs. They brew some sour beers as well, and Anders says that he wants to brew different styles and things in the future. But the name Elmeleven comes from where he lived, which was Almbacksgatan 11. So yeah, Elmeleven. Elm is obviously the elm. Alm in Swedish is obviously like the English the elm tree in English, I guess we could say. Brain's not working these days. But yeah, he said that this is just kind of something that stuck with him from his home brewing days. So yeah, Elmeleven. But as of February 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, they've produced around 35 different kinds of beer. And like I said, I've reviewed maybe about 7 or so of the beers that involve this brewery here on the channel. I think a number of those might have just been, very, very small batches that were sold in the Baron Gustav Adolf's story, but I think I've reviewed everything from them that's gone into bottle so far. But yeah, like I said, if you're interested in the big kind of juicy, fruity, sour type beers, this is definitely a brewery that I would recommend you keep an eye on. The stuff that these guys are doing is on par with the likes of Wizard, Morgendagens, Fermentararna, Duck Pond, all of these kind of guys. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out for this brewery if those are the sort of beers that you're interested in. So yeah, always nice to feature these guys on the channel. Hopefully I can get Anders on the channel at some point for a Meet the Brewery thing. He was actually quite keen to do that, but then this whole COVID-19 thing hit, so I will need to talk to him about that again, maybe a little bit later in the year. But he's a lovely guy, very distinctive. He's got a lot of tattoos. He's a bit, long red hair. Lovely guy. And if you meet him, you will remember him. Just a very, very, very nice and very kind of animated guy, actually, and always happy to talk about beer. So yeah, it is, hopefully we can get him on the channel at some point soon, and do check out his beers for sure. I think, if he can get his volume up a little bit, I think he's going to do very, very well out of the brewing game. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Elmeleven for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. I'm trying to remember if they have one. I think they might not. So otherwise, follow them on Instagram and Facebook, and that will keep you up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all of the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer then. So once again, we have lovely artwork from Elmeleven. They're very... the thing that I find really funny about these beers is they've got the kind of spaceman sort of theme to them. So there you can see the Elmeleven symbol. But the names of these beers, the artwork on them, it makes me think of like, concept albums, concept metal albums. That's what it really reminds me of, actually. There's a band here in Sweden called Atoma, who they've been on a hiatus for a good couple of years, and they're just about to release a new album, actually. And Elmeleven really reminds me of the band Atoma. They're kind of like ambient symphonic power metal sort of thing. They're really interesting band. So check those guys out if you haven't already. But yeah, the Elmeleven artwork, it's very sort of concept albumy, and the name Stars Are Other Suns. So yeah, it's a really, really interesting beer, this. But there you can see plain black bottle cap on this one. And fingers crossed this is going to be another good beer. But like I said, they're describing this one as a fruited sour ale with pink guava, peach and mango. I think this one's going to have quite a nice, sharp, tropical note to it. Guava, I've always found it tastes quite similar to mango, but just a little bit sharper. Peaches, very distinctive, and then mango's nice and kind of soft and creamy. But yeah, 5% of this. Let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting. And I'm really curious about this beer. So this beer, 330 milliliter bottle, of course, and I think I might have paid about 35 or 40 Swedish kroners for this. So to translate that for you, that would be about €3.50, maybe about £3 sterling, maybe about $4 American, something like that. Yeah, there we go. Try and get as much of the sediment out of this as possible. So yeah, there we go. All right then. Did I manage? No, there's still quite a bit on the bottom there, but I did get a fair wee bit of it. That's one thing with these big fruity juicy Berliner Weisses and stuff like that, is you still manage to get a lot of sediment in the bottom there. Yeah, there we go. I think I've got that lined up quite nicely. But yeah, that looks pretty cool. So as you can see, this one just looks like a kind of New England IPA or something like that. So yeah, as you can see, the beer, when we've poured it, it's poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy. I would say that's a perfect white head on this one. I wouldn't even describe that as creamy. Definitely a perfect white head. There's 1 or 2 bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there. But as you can see, this one is, there's very little transparency to that. That beer is opaque as hell. It's very, very hazy. And, when there's wheat in the beer, that is to be expected, to be honest with you. With these big kind of fruity sours, you are going to get that. So remember, the colour of your beer is dependent on 2 or 3 things. One, the type of malts that you use, and then 2, the length of your wort boil. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, thus you get a darker colour to the beer. But it's dependent in the first instance on what malts you use, and then for these kind of sour beers, it depends on the adjunct. If you use some sort of berry and stuff, it's going to give you a nice bright, a bit like a nice kind of brighter colour. But obviously with the tropical fruit ones, it's going to give you a more kind of tropical fruit juice like this. So I would describe this beer as being a little bit of a kind of murky, light orange, very dark yellow, something like that. It looks like a mixed kind of tropical fruit juice, to be honest with you. You can see that the head is just fading away to give a very light kind of foamy layer, and it's leaving a little bit of a ring around the edge of the glass. Wheat will give you a good little bit of head retention, but yeah, you can see that is just kind of going away on this one. But yeah, it looks like a lovely beer. It's pretty much as you would expect from these big, it is pretty much as you would expect from these kind of big, these big kind of juicy, these big kind of fruity, juicy sours actually. So yeah, let's take a closer look at the aroma of this one and see how we get on. Nothing overly surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider that it's one of these kind of big sort of Berliner Weisse, Gose type sours, and then what fruits are in it. So let's take a look at that aroma then. Oh, yeah. That's really interesting. It's actually, you can smell the base layer of this beer. It's kind of separate. The aroma for me is kind of separated into 2 things. You can tell it straight away. You've got the little sharper tropical fruits on the top, which I would guess is the pink guava and the peach. You can really smell those kind of at the top of the nose, whereas everything else is kind of sitting below that on the nose, if that makes sense. So you can smell the big, juicy, kind of soft, creamy mango out of this one. So yeah, the fruits, obviously the fruits are the things that are going to jump out of the aroma at you straight away with this beer. It smells lovely, actually. Yeah. As I say, it's been maybe about 5-6 months or something like that since I had one of these Elmeleven beers. But as I say, it's a brewery that I do keep an eye out for. If I see Elmeleven on this list, it goes straight in the Systembolaget basket, always. I would like to see a few IPAs from them though. I would like to try, another style. I think the only other style I've had from these guys so far would be the Elements Lager, which I think was released as a collaboration with Chad Beer, come to think of it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Elmeleven actually joined the Nerd, Chad, Lila Ulfabriken kind of collective that they have there, because it's all one company these days. All 3 of these separate breweries merged to kind of own a singular company together. So yeah, the aroma in this beer is just lovely. So let's focus on the kind of malty side of things then. So with this beer, straight away you can smell that it's a little bit more grainy. Like this one smells to me that it's a little bit more kind of grainy than some of the other Elmeleven ones that I've had before. Like you can really smell a bit of the rye kind of coming out of this one. It's got a little bit of a rye kind of brown bready sort of base to it, but on top of that it's all the kind of big wheaty kind of qualities actually. And I'm just, as I say, it's been a while since I've had one of their beers, but from memory, I remember their other beers being a lot more kind of like yogurty, kind of creamy, if that makes sense. I think all of the other ones probably had a bit of oats in them. I think they might have had rye, wheat and oats in them, come to think of it. But yeah, this beer to me doesn't smell as kind of thick and creamy as some of the other ones that I've had. So I think this sour might be quite a bit different from the others. But yeah, nice kind of brown bready, sort of rye bready type base to it. You can definitely smell a big kind of thick wheaty note out of it, but then on top of that, you do get some of that yogurtiness out of it. It's not, as I say, I don't find it as prominent as it was in some of the other beers, but it really has a bit of that kind of almost I don't know if I'd go as far as lactosey. Maybe it's got that maltodextrin kind of smoothness to it. You can really get a lot of that out of this beer, and then you get some of that kind of yogurty type quality out of it. So yeah, as I've said in reviews before, when it comes to these styles of beers, I find these Berliner Weisse, Gose, and I think obviously technically I probably shouldn't use these terms, but these type of modern big fruity creamy type sours, I find them remarkably straight shooting in terms of their aromas and flavour profiles, but they're just so nice. They are really just such nice beers from both of those perspectives. So yeah, with this beer, brown bready, kind of rye type thing there, bit of the smoothness from the wheat. I wonder if there's a wee bit of maltodextrin in here because of the smoothness that you have, but those things kind of club together and give you a bit of a kind of yogurty, creamy sort of note to it, but that's not as prominent as the other ones I remember from Elmeleven before. And yeah, I think that covers your malt base, to be honest with you. This beer, if I remember rightly, does not have hops in it, and this is a bit of a thing. I've spoken about this in reviews before. I do wonder, there's a brewery back home in Scotland called Vault City who are getting, you know, rave reviews at the moment, and they use hops in their beers. You know, I think they use a lot of, you know, low alpha acid, noble hops and stuff like this. I actually think adding hops into these sour beers just gives them another bit of depth of flavour. But even if you don't, as is the case in this beer, I think, you know, you do still get a little bit of that placebo effect where you pick up a little bit of grassiness and a little bit of floral character, and you can definitely get that out of this beer. For me, there is definitely a little bit of that kind of floral grassy sort of thing to this one, but again, it could just be placebo effect, to be honest with you. So for me, I think that covers the sort of green side of the beer and also the malty side of things. It's a lovely aroma that you get out of this. But like I said earlier, on the fruity side of things, you get a bit of sharpness, which will be the pink guava. I actually couldn't tell you what the main difference between pink guava and regular guava is. Just, you know, it'll obviously taste a bit different. But you do get a bit of peachy sharpness and a bit of that bright pink guava sort of quality to it. So yeah, like I said, I've always found that guava tastes a bit sharper, but almost but a little bit more kind of green than mango, but there's definitely mango elements to it, if that makes sense. But then you've also got how would you say, you've also got a nice kind of soft, slightly creamy mango coming out of this one as well. So yeah, you definitely, the mango sort of forms the base of the fruits for me, and then it's got that yogurty element to it. The mango and the yogurty notes kind of come out in this one quite nicely. Then you've got the sharper peach and guava, pink guava, sitting on top of that. So yeah, this beer, as I say, it's in some ways it's very typical Elmeleven, but it's a bit sharper on the fruits, and I would say that it's a bit less kind of creamy in things, a bit less creamy and yogurty compared to some of the other ones that I've had from Elmeleven before. So yeah, it's an interesting beer, this one. So yeah, take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma, but I think it's time that we try this one now. So this one is called Stars or Other Suns. Elmeleven are describing it as a fruited sour. I suspect it's going to be a bit Berliner Weisse-like, to be honest. But this one is with mango, pink guava and peach. So yeah, 5%er, released in February 2021 through Systembolaget here in Sweden. Nice to have Elmeleven on the channel once again. Slange, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that's nice. I'm going to say straight away, just, you know, I had a feeling about that I was going to like this beer, and it's, again, straight off, it is very nice. My impressions from the aroma carry over into the flavour of this beer, definitely. Nice and big. It definitely has a bit more sharpness to it than I remember from some of the other Elmelevens. But it actually, it has the same level of kind of smoothness and stuff, not the big thick creaminess, but it comes across as maybe a bit lighter and a bit kind of slicker than the other ones I've had before. But equally as good, just a slightly different direction, and it kind of shows you that even within these styles that are quite, you know, straight shooting in a lot of ways, you can play around with them quite a little bit. So yeah, definitely interested in this for sure. But another solid release from Elmeleven, we can say that straight away. Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to know how big his batches are. I don't know if they're like 1,000 or 2,000 litres or exactly what they are, but these beers are, you know, damn solid. Like I said, they're up there with the Morgendagens, the Duck Ponds, the Elmelevens, and breweries like this, you know, the Biancas, Romney Poyo, they are up there. I think they're very solidly done. So yeah, in some ways, in some way, I want to say to Anders, like, you know, stick with these styles because you're you know, this is maybe a niche where you're really kind of shining, if you like. But at the same time, it would be cool to see what you can do with other styles as well. So a bit torn there, but yeah, these beers are very, very nice. Let's try and just break down the flavour of this and explain it a little bit more. Yeah, so the more that you drink of this as well, it does kind of smoothen out a little bit. Actually, it smells in the aroma that it actually smells more kind of grainy in the aroma than it actually is in the flavour. But yeah, let's break this down. Straight away then, across the middle of your palate, you can feel a little bit of that kind of brown rye bready sort of thing. That goes right across the middle of your palate. But on top of that, you start to get the kind of smoothness of the wheat there, and that just blankets it. This beer really does come across as a Berliner Weisse. I'd be curious to know why it technically isn't, or why Anders hasn't called it that, to be honest, because it really is just like a Berliner Weisse. It's not got the saltiness of a Gose, so I would never call this beer a Gose. But yeah, I'd be curious, as I say, just to know why he hasn't called it a Berliner Weisse, because I think he did call some of the other ones Berliner Weisses. But yeah, so yeah, it definitely has a bit of that kind of maltodextrin sort of smoothness to it. It's got a really smooth kind of, it almost feels like oats. I mean, if I was blind tasting this, I would think it was oats, to be honest with you, that was in this. But again, I think it's maltodextrin. You really get that kind of, on top of that, sort of in the middle third of your palate, you've got that kind of rye bready sort of base, which is, it's not madly thick, but then on top of that you get the really nice smoothness from the maltodextrin, and it comes across as quite kind of oaty. What you'll feel in the middle, in the very middle of your palate there, it does develop that almost slightly dry character of oats. It's almost like a little bit powdery, but then as you move further out from the centre of your palate there, it starts to develop a little bit more of a kind of yogurty, oaty sort of thing, particularly in the front half of that kind of middle third of your tongue. So yeah, you do get some of these yogurty elements out of this one, definitely. But like I say, I don't find this beer to be quite as thick as some of the other ones from Elmeleven. It could just be my palate's changed over time. I would be interested to hear Anders' thought on that, actually, but maybe it's just my palate kind of changing over time, because at the time I would have first encountered these beers, I wasn't quite as used to them as I am now, so maybe they just feel a little bit lighter. It's like sour beers. When you try them at the first, they're sour as hell, but then your palate adjusts to them over time, so it could just be that. But yeah, this one, I just feel this one's a bit slicker than some of the other ones, but then again, it doesn't have oats, and the oats will thicken out the beer significantly. But at the end of the day, part of me wants to say, who cares? He's producing really nice sour beers. But yeah, it's interesting. So if you go to that kind of border region between the middle third and back third of your palate, you do get a wee bit of a kind of bread crusty note out of this one. That's there. But then on the back third of your palate, you can feel that the wheatiness is kind of thicker there. So yeah, back third of your palate is distinctly thicker than the middle third of your palate. So as you come further forward, you'll feel the thickness just drop away at that border region. Then in the middle third of your palate, it's got a nice kind of smoothness and just kind of medium thickness to the beer, actually. So I really like how that goes together. But yeah, it's the malty side of this beer. It's very straight shooting. If you know this brewery, you would kind of expect it. But as I say, it's not quite as big on the yogurty side of things, and it's not quite as big and creamy as some of the other ones that I've had before. But I think that suits the beer overall. That's not meant to. It's just an observation. It's not a kind of derision, if you like. It's not a criticism. It's just a wee bit different, but I like it. As I say, I certainly like this. I think that covers the malt base as much as we need to be honest. Like I say, these sours are quite straight shooting, but the flavours are just lovely. On the edge of the palate then, as I say, normally this is where you get the hoppy characters, but this beer doesn't have hops in it. But I still get a wee touch of earthiness there in the back corners of the palate. There's a wee tiny thing of whatever is something that feels a bit more floral in the front corners of the tongue, and round the front curve of the palate, it does just feel a little bit more kind of grassy. But yeah, I do appreciate how it doesn't have these kind of things. It feels very smooth on the edge of the palate, actually. So I appreciate that about this one for sure. But yeah, let's focus on the fruity side of things then. So yeah, front third of your palate is really quite nice. And this is your fruity note. So On that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, there's a wee bit of a sort of bread crusty kind of thing there. Underneath that front third of your palate, it's got, again, a little bit of that sort of malto, dextrine smoothness to it. A little bit, it almost feels like oats, but not quite, if that makes sense. But yeah, if you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you get a slightly kind of more concentrated, citrusy sort of thing. And it feels like on that front third of your tongue, it's the nice, soft mango. It's almost that kind of soft, creamy mango that kind of sits there. I think the mango is the fruit that lingers most into this one, and you've just got wee hints of the guava, the slightly sharper guava kind of fitting in there. Like I said, I've always found that the flavour profile of guava is quite similar to mango, but it's just a wee bit sharper. So maybe, I've not had guava too often, but maybe a bit of the guava is lingering there as well, because it has got, the mango in this beer does develop a little bit of a sort of kind of green quality the further you go into the aftertaste, so that's lingering there for me. And the peach, I think on the front part of the tongue, very kind of front edge of the tongue, I think you're starting to get more of the kind of peachy quality. But remember, the fruity side of this beer is really, the fruity side of this beer is based on adjuncts. It's not based on hops. So whenever you add fruit into beer as adjuncts, it normally, pardon me, it takes away from, you know, it would take away from the green side of things. It would take away a little bit of the kind of green side of the hops, which I quite like, actually. It sits on top of the green side of things, so you definitely get a wee, around the edge of the tongue, there's definitely a bit of the mango lingering there, and I think round on the front part of the palate you'll get a wee bit of the peach and the guava and things like that, so you can get a little bit of the fruit kind of moving around the edges of the palate there as well. But yeah, like I say, this one, it strikes me as a wee bit sharper, a little bit slicker, and maybe not quite as thick as some of the other Elmeleven sours, but regardless, I think it works really nicely. So this beer, again, gets a big thumbs up from me. This brewery has a very bright future. If they can up their kind of capacity a little bit, you know, I think these guys will do, Anders is going to do very, very well with this brewery. I'd be curious to see whether he is going to join the Lilla Ölfabriken company, properly. So yeah, I would definitely be curious to see that. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, to round off the review, I would describe this beer as being at the kind of top end of mid-bodied. Like I say, it's not the thickest of these big kind of creamy, fruity, sour sort of things that I've come across. It's not the thickest beer I've had from Elmeleven, but it's still got it's got a lovely smoothness to it. This beer feels a little bit slicker, and I think the mouthfeel really suits the flavour profile of the beer. In terms of IBUs, obviously, I think technically speaking, this is going to have 0 IBUs, but I think, in reality, it's going to have about 10 or something like that, if that, maybe 5 is more accurate. But the malt base, like I say, lovely and smooth. There's a wee bit of kind of grainy sort of note under there. It develops a bit of sweetness the further you go into the aftertaste, and the fruits, lovely and juicy. The mango in particular is very smooth. There's a little bit of sharpness in there, and I think this beer is really, really nicely executed. So this is just another very, very solidly done beer, and I'm glad that I was able to review this one for you. So this was lovely. I really, really enjoyed this. So yeah, huge thumbs up to Elmeleven for this one once again. Like I said, definitely a brewery to watch if you're interested in these big fruity sour beers. And this one was great. So this one was the Stars or Other Suns. I do think this beer was a bit Berliner Weisse-like. In honesty, I think it is a Berliner Weisse, but I would be curious to know the technicalities of why Anders didn't call it that. Maybe he just prefers the more general term, I don't know. But it's very nicely done. So like I say, keep an eye on this brewery and have a go at some of their beers. But this one was the Stars or Other Suns, a fruity sour, based Berliner Weisse, at 5% ABV with mango, pink guava, and peach added into it, from Elmeleven, based in Malmö here in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from this brewery. Let me know some other breweries that are doing similar things to this that I maybe haven't encountered before. Always cool to hear about those. But thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very, very soon. Slange, skål, cheers, and do make sure you check out Elmeleven from Malmö here in Skåne in the south of Sweden.